Genesis chapter 42. We were kind of in the middle of that chapter, and so I'd like to start tonight on verse 23. Chapter 42, verse 23. So Joseph's brothers are over in Egypt trying to get food. There's a big famine in the land. Joseph has been put over all the house of Pharaoh. He's ruler over all of Egypt at this point. For 7 years he saved up the crops and stored those in each of the cities around Egypt and so forth. And now we've gotten into the point where the famine's in the land, and Jacob and his family, which are several thousand people at this time. This household's grown, okay? Remember now, he grew, but he also inherited Abraham and Isaac's household. So this is a considerable size household at this point, with all the family and the servants and the children and all the animals and everything else. And a famine has hit the land over in Canaan, which is where they're at. And the brothers have gone over to Egypt to buy food. And there they run into their brother Joseph, who they don't recognize. It's been a long time since they've seen him, and so forth. And then Joseph even talked to them through an interpreter. But let's start in verse 23. And they knew not that Joseph understood them, for he spake unto them by an interpreter. And he turned himself about from them and wept, and returned to them again and communed with them, and took them from Simon and took from them Simon and bound him before their eyes. When Joseph commanded to fill their sacks with corn, and to restore every man's money into his sack, and to give them provision for the way, and thus did he unto them. And they laded their asses with the corn and departed thence. And as one of them opened his sack to give his ass provender from the inn, he espied his money, for behold, it was in his sack's mouth. And he said unto his brethren, My money is restored, and lo, it is even in my sack. And their heart failed them, and they were afraid, saying one to another, What is this that God hath done unto us? So, as I said, Joseph was talking to his brothers. Now, he recognized them, but they didn't really recognize him. It'd been quite a while. It'd been probably about 10 years, close to 10 years since he had seen his brothers, and his brother had seen him. And keep in mind now, Joseph was one of the younger, he was on the younger side of all these brothers, okay? So he grew up and probably changed more than the brothers. You'll hear people argue sometimes when they're talking about the Bible, when you know your brothers, well, there's a length of time. And then my oldest brother, he went to Vietnam a few times and so forth. But Tommy didn't change too much, okay? But you look at my pictures, I changed quite a bit because I was like this tall whenever he took off to Vietnam. And over a period of time, I changed quite a bit where Tommy didn't change so much. So this is just natural things. This is not unusual, okay? And all within the realm of possibility. And we know it's in God's Word, so it's true. In verse 25, Joseph commanded to fill their sacks with corn. And we talked last week about corn. It might be wheat and some other things too. It's not just corn as we know it. But this is the way King James wrote it, talking about in corn. And to restore every man's money into his sack. So Joseph was behind saying, okay, not only do you give them the corn, okay, and put it on, but you also go out and take the money that they brought in and you hide it in their sacks. You put it back in their sacks. So he's giving that back. Now, why do you think Joseph was giving his brother's money back? You think he was trying to trap them? No. You see, he wasn't ready to let himself be known. Yeah, he still wanted to be known as a governor of all this land under Pharaoh. He didn't want to be known as their brother. But he couldn't outwardly give that money back to them in front of them. It caused a lot of stir among the Egyptians too. Okay? But he was giving this money back to his brothers to take care of their needs, of his family, of his father. So he was focused in on some things that were much higher than that, than just giving them some money. He was trying to meet their needs. Verse 26, and they laded their asses with the corn and departed thence. And as one of them opened his sack to give his ass provender. What is that saying? I'm gonna feed my donkey. Okay, I'm gonna give him. It's time to feed him. Now, in some of the notes that I've studied, there were two groups of sacks. Okay, that this corn or this food was put in. Okay, and the ones that were on the donkey was there to feed the donkey, to feed the animal that they were riding with, and so forth. And so that he was getting into that. Now, it's odd to me, or seems interesting to me, that Joseph hid the money in the donkey's food. Okay, not in the. Why do you think he didn't put it in some of these other bags of corn? He wanted them to see it. He wanted them to find it. Okay? Keep in mind, there's thousands of people they're fixing to go feed. We're not talking about 2 or 3 bags of corn. We're talking about a lot of corn that they were hauling back. A lot of provisions back. And so forth. And if he just randomly stuck this money back in there, okay, it might have gone all the way back home and been put in a barn somewhere, and it had been a year before they found that money. Okay, that's not what Joseph was wanting. He's wanting them to find it. So in verse 27, and as one of them opened the sack to give his ass provender in the end, he espied his money. He saw his money. For behold, it was in the sack's mouth. So it was right up top. And he said to his brother, my money is restored, and lo, it is even in my sack. And their heart failed them, and they were afraid, saying one to another, what is this that God hath done unto us? Now Joseph is sitting here trying to bless his brothers and his family. But when they find the money, what's the first thing they start thinking about? What's God's fixing to hit us. They had a guilty conscience. They were sitting there looking at something totally different than what Joseph intended. Why were they feeling guilty about this?
This is what they've done to him, their brother.
Well, they didn't know this was even his brother.
But they knew what they'd done to their brother.
Yeah, but, okay, and not only to their brother, Joseph, but don't you imagine that since they, remember whenever we talked about how they were evil in so many different ways, okay? They were just into everything all the time.
They lied to their daddy.
That's right. What's their daddy known as? The deceiver. His nickname was the deceiver. Their daddy was the deceiver. How he deceived his brother, with a lamb skin over his hand on the back of his neck to get his birthright and all that, and the blessing, and those things. See, so Jacob was a deceiver. He had 12 sons. Okay, and most of them were all messed up in all different things. So now all of a sudden they're leaving Egypt. They got all this corn. Now they paid for it, but now they're going along and they're finding out that all their money stuck back in the corn sacks. Okay, and so it seems kind of natural that if you've been a mess, if you've been a troublemaker and all this thing, that you're going to think trouble's going to be pursuing you too. And so they sat down and they didn't just say, look, we're in trouble because we've been a mess all this time. But they're even saying, look what God has done unto us. Okay? So they're even blaming God on what they think's fixing to happen to them. Verse 29. And they came unto Jacob, their father, into the land of Canaan, and told them all that had befell unto them, saying, the man, so they don't know who Joseph is. So they're just talking about the man, who is the Lord of the land, spake roughly to us, and took us for spies in the country. They go back to their daddy. This man over there in Egypt, he was mean to us. Now I can just imagine Joseph recognizing his brothers, how he probably pushed that a little bit. I believe he might have gotten loud to his interpreter a little bit, and carried on a little bit to try to have a little fun. And I believe God probably let him have that fun. Okay, a little bit. Verse 32. We be 12 brothers, sons of our father. One is not, and the youngest is this day with our father in the land of Canaan. So see, Joseph didn't even have to be smart about setting this up. When the brothers got in front of him and Joseph talked harshly to them, they sat down and said, look, we're all one family. There's 12 of us. Now, one's not here anymore. They thought Joseph was dead. Okay, they were assuming he was dead. And one's not with us, but he's back in Canaan with our daddy. Okay, that's what they're explaining to him. So verse 33, and the man talking about Joseph again, the Lord of the country said unto us, hereby shall I know that ye are true men. Leave one of your brethren here with me, and take food for the famine of your households, and be gone. Okay? And bring your youngest brother unto me. Then shall I know that ye are no spies, but that you are true men. So will I deliver you your brother, and you shall traffic in the land, or you can move freely in the land, is what he's saying now. If they were really spies, and not all one family, and Joseph let them leave with all that food, what's the chances of them coming back?
Slim to none.
So Joseph really put a scare on them. He put a scare on them because they didn't see that. They didn't see these other possibilities that were falling through had they not really been brothers and so forth. Had they been spies, they'd have scattered like rats from a burning ship. Okay? But bring your youngest brother to him, he says, in verse 35, and it came to pass as they emptied their sacks, that behold, every man's bundle of money was in his sack. And when both they and their father saw the bundles of money, they were afraid. So even Jacob thought somebody was after him. See, that's the first thing he leaned to. Based on how you deal with people and with God, based with how you deal with people and with God, will give an indication as how you react to people and with God. Okay? If you're sitting there cheating and scheming all the time, when something happens to you, you're going to think somebody's cheating or scheming you. But if you're sitting there and you're not cheating, you're not scheming, and you're just doing what you're supposed to, when something happens, then you just take it as it comes and you handle it. If it's bad, you fix it. If it's good, you accept it and you keep on going. But the extra burden is on your life whenever you're dealing with people and God unfairly or wrongly. Okay? So if you want to take a lot of stress out of your life, okay, if you'll just deal with people and with God properly, a lot of stress is going to come off your life. You look at the way they have been dealing with other people and with God. And there they are, they got their money back. And that became a bad thing. Okay? See, because of how they've been dealing with people. They thought somebody was trying to come after them. But yet nobody stopped them from leaving Egypt. If they were going to get murdered and slaughtered, don't you think that's when the time would have been, when they were leaving, before they completely got over into Canaan and disappeared? See? But see, their conscience was seared a little bit. They had been dealing wrongly with some people. So that's the way they thought things were coming. Verse 36, and Jacob their father said unto them, me have ye bereaved of my children. Joseph is not, and Simon is not, and ye will take Benjamin away. All these things are against me. Now Jacob, look at what situation he was in. See, he thought he'd already lost Joseph. He saw that coat of many colors with blood all over. Okay, remember? So Joseph, in his mind, he's gone. Benjamin is sitting there, and he's got instructions now. We're supposed to take our little brother back over there. So what's going to happen? Probably not going to be good. And Simon's in chains over there right now. All this is on him, he said. And Reuben spake to his father in verse 37, saying, slay my two sons if I bring him not to thee. Deliver him into my hand, and I will bring him to thee again. So Reuben's sitting there and said, look, Daddy, I'll go and I'll get Simon. I'll go get Simon. If I get him in my hands, I'll bring him back to me. Now, if not, you can take two of my sons and kill them. Wow. That's pretty strong, isn't it? But remember, Reuben,
I said, I can never figure things like that.
I
The man who pledged, I've forgotten what it was, I think that was in Genesis 2. His daughter, if something happened, then he would kill the first person he saw when he returned, he would kill. And it was his daughter.
Yeah.
I just,
kids and killed them. You know, these types of things weren't taken lightly like sometimes we holler about today. When Reuben said, look, you let me go and I'll get Simon. And if I can get him in my hands, Daddy, I'm going to bring him back to you. And if I don't, then you take two of my sons and you kill them. If Jacob agreed to that, that's exactly what would have happened. Okay, back then. So strong stuff. It's just almost incomprehensible in our minds how strong these vows and these agreements were. Okay? But there again, you got to understand, since Reuben said it, he meant it. I'm going to go get him. You know, these types of vows and so forth that you see going on are serious. And if I can, when you say you're going to do something for somebody, you need to do it with that same intensity. You know, if you say, listen, I'm going to come over, I'm going to cut all your grass and dig all your post holes and everything, and you better go cut their grass and dig all their post holes because you said you were going to do it. You need to be, when somebody hears you say something, they need to understand you mean it, okay, to that thing. Now, be careful with what you're saying, okay? You know, don't let foolish stuff comes out of your mouth because you don't want to sit down and, they're only kidding. No. You need to be careful with that. New Testament says a lot of stuff about that too, okay? But you need to be a person of your word. Verse 38, and he said, my son shall not go down with you, for his brother is dead, and he is left alone. If mischief befall him by the way in the which ye go, then shall ye bring down my gray hairs with sorrow to the grave. In other words, Jacob is sitting saying, Benjamin's not going to go back there with you. I've already gone through enough. I've already lost Joseph. Okay? Now Simon's over there. Now look, I'm not going to let you take Benjamin. So Jacob is sitting there making a stand and saying, look, I'm an old man. Okay? And I can't handle any more of this type of stuff. I can't lose any more of my children. If something were to happen to him on the way or coming back, then my gray hairs, it says, then shall you bring me down, then shall you bring down my gray hairs with sorrow to the grave. Okay? He didn't want to die that way. And the famine was sore in the land, chapter 43. And it came to pass when they had eaten up the corn which they had brought out of Egypt, their father said to them, go again, buy us a little food. Now, some of the notes that I've gone over is it shows that this was probably 2 years into the famine. They'd been eating on that corn for 2 years. Can you imagine a couple thousand people and all the cattle eating that? How much corn they hauled back out of Egypt now? Now, it's lasted them about 2 years. And Jacob's sitting there saying, listen, you go back over to Egypt and buy us a little food. Now, I don't know how you buy a little food with that much being in Egypt. But it's, they were running out of food. He said, go. Now, and Judah, verse 3, and Judah spake unto him, saying, the man, still talking about Joseph, did solemnly protest unto us, saying, you shall not see my face, except your brother be with you. Okay? Now look, Jacob's put this off for about 2 years. All these brothers put this off for about 2 years. They didn't turn around and go right back to Egypt and buy some more. Okay? They didn't go immediately back with Benjamin. Jacob was sitting there saying, hey, I'm not going to let you take him. I've already lost Joseph. Simon's already in bondage over there. He's in chains. And you're not going to take a third of a third son and go over there and let something happen. So they put this off about as long as they could. They were out of food. That famine had continued to go. And Judah sat down and he started reminding everybody, listen, the man over there that's over Egypt, he said, you can't come back to us unless your brother's with you. Verse 4, if thou wilt send our brother with us, we will go down and buy thee food. So Judah's sitting there saying, listen, there was a condition on us coming back. Now, think about this whole picture. They've been rascals. They had done wrong by people. And if they're doing wrong by people, they're doing wrong by God. Because individuals that do wrong by people will do God wrong. Okay? what's the Bible say over? If you hate your brother, but say you love God, the truth's not in you. Okay, now who's the truth? Jesus. Jesus is the truth. That's a scary thing if you think about it that way. But if you say you hate your brother, but you say you love God, the truth's not in you. Because you can't sit down and hate the people around you and love God. Okay? If you love God, you can love people. Okay? But if you hate people, you can't say you love God. Jesus was talking to us in those scriptures. You know, so you look at a person and see how they treat the people around them, and you see how they treat God in their life. Okay? And if God's always the same, He's the same yesterday, today, and forever, then you sit down and you see how these brothers, they hadn't been treating people right. Now they find their money in the corn. They come home. They've lost Simon now. So they've already done away with Joseph. Now they've messed around and messed up with Simon. And they're told by the man over in Egypt, you got to bring Benjamin back. If you want more food, you're gonna have to bring your little brother back. And they're thinking this man is going to think we stole his money. That's a bad problem. Okay, when you think about all that's happening there. We put this off. We put this off 2 years.
How was Benjamin about this time? About how old was Benjamin this time?
Benjamin was probably in his 30s, because he already had a couple of kids, which shows that these boys were being married between age 15 and 20. Okay, so they were taking wives when they were 15 to 20. So Benjamin's running 30, 32 years old now. Okay, there. But just think about Simon. Simon got left over there in Egypt. It'd been 2 years. He ain't heard nothing. Okay, now if you had a bunch of rascal brothers that have been doing wrong things all this time, and they left you in chains, and supposed to come back, were you 2 years now? Would you think they're coming back? That family is in a mess. Verse 4, if thou wilt send our brother with us, we will go down and buy thee food. Judah knew this man over in Egypt wasn't playing games. Okay? He spake harshly with us, he said. Okay, but verse 5. But if thou wilt not send him, we will not go down, for the man said unto us, ye shall not see my face, except your brother be with you. Okay? So Judah knew, we can't go back. This man will not sell us any food. It's a waste of time. If we don't bring Benjamin with us, Daddy, we can't go. It's going to be a waste of time. Verse 6, and Israel said, now who's Israel? Jacob, that's right. And Israel said, wherefore dealt ye so ill with me, as to tell the man whether ye had yet a brother? So Jacob been sitting here now. Israel been sitting there going, why'd you bring up your brothers? Okay? Why'd you even bring that up? You're just causing us problems now. And they said, the man asked us straightly of our state and of our kindred, saying, is your father yet alive? Yet have ye another brother? And we told him according to the tenor of these words. Could we certainly know that he would say, bring your brother down? We didn't know he was going to ask for Benjamin. You know? Now, you could sit here and think, well, Joseph was being smart, and he was setting all this up. Or you can sit down and think about, well, the brothers were rascals, and you know, what comes around goes around type thing, which is karma, which be careful when you use that, because that's of another religion. Okay? I don't believe in karma. I don't believe in what goes around comes around. God's in control of these things. And it doesn't matter what kind of rascals the brothers were. It doesn't matter what kind of position that Joseph was in. God had all put that together for a purpose. Okay? And as I brought up at the end of the last week's study, When this famine came in, it didn't surprise God. God knew the famine was coming in across the land. He knew it was going to go across Egypt. He knew it was going to go spread over toward Canaan. He knew it was going to wipe out all these crops and everything. It wasn't a surprise. But from the time before Joseph was even born, God was putting in things. He knew things were happening. Why? Because it wasn't just to take care of Egypt and all those people. It wasn't just to bless Joseph and his wisdom and his interpretation of dreams, but it was for the children of Israel. Because way, way back, God said, I'm going to make you father of many nations. Like the stars in the sky, like the sand on the shore. Okay? And all the world's going to be blessed because of your people, the children of Israel. If God didn't make a way, and it said all these things, God would have been a liar. God was going to sustain his word. So it's not Joseph so much, it's not his brothers so much in the state they were in, it's God. God is bringing these things about because God said it was going to happen. Okay? So if God sits down and says one day we're going to hear the trump of God and we're going to hear the shout of the archangel, what's going to happen? We're going to hear a shout of the archangel, we're going to hear a trump of God. And if God sits down in his word, he says, and one day we're going to be caught up to meet him in the air. What's going to happen? Now, how's that going to happen? I have no clue. But it's going to happen. Why? Because God said so. Okay? So we've got to understand God's intent while we go through these words. Is your father yet alive? Have ye another brother? And we told him, according to the tenor of these words, could we certainly know that he would say, bring your brother down? Verse 8, and Judah said unto Israel his father, send the lad with me, and we will arise and go, that we may live and not die, both we and thou and also our little ones. So Judah said, listen, Daddy, I'll be responsible for him. Give him to me, and we'll go. We'll go buy this stuff, and none of us are going to die. Not us, not our families, not our little ones. We're going to live. Verse 9, and will be surety, I will be surety for him. What's surety?
Guarantee.
Guarantee. Yeah, that's exactly right. I'll be a guarantee for him. Of my hand shalt thou require him. If I bring him not unto thee and set him before thee, then let me bear the blame forever. Okay? For except we had lingered, surely now we had returned a second time. And the father Israel said unto them, if it must be so now, do this. Take on the best fruits in the land in your vessels. Carry down the man a present, a little balm and a little honey, spices and myrrh, nuts and almonds. So Israel or Jacob is sitting there saying, okay, you go ahead and go, but get the best fruits of this land. Now they're in a famine, so you know, there was something there apparently, because he said, take the best fruits in your vessels and carry down the man a present, a little balm. Okay, what's a balm for? What's a balm? I get a scratch or a scuff or something, I can put balm in. It keeps the insects out and helps heal, right? But bring him something that'll help him heal. A little honey. What's honey? It can be two things. It can actually be two things. I didn't know this. I had to study too. It could be two things. It can be the things that honeybees make, honey, and it can be the juice from dates. Okay? So whenever Jacob is sending them, that honey here could be one of two things. Maybe he's going to send some of both. I don't know. Okay? A little honey. Spices. Okay? Spices were like money. Okay? It was like money, but oh my goodness, what can you do with spices? You know, you add them to your food, you make your house smell good, all this type of stuff. So you can use these spices. And myrrh. Myrrh is an expensive gift. What was given to Jesus when he was born by the kings? Myrrh was one of them. Why? Because it was an expensive thing. Nuts and almonds. Then verse 12, and take double money in your hand. So where I was going to send you $1 million, take $2 million. Or where I was going to send you with $1,000, take $2,000, double the money. Take double the money in your hand. And the money that was brought again in the mouth of your sacks, carry it again under the hand, in your hand, pre-adventure. It was an oversight. So he said, take double the money that you should have to take. Okay? And that money that was put in your sacks on that last trip 2 years ago, take that. Okay? And bring it in case there was a mistake. Okay? In case there was an oversight. Somehow it got put in those sacks by mistake or something. Bring it. Make sure this man gets his money back. Also take your brother and arise, go again unto the man. And God Almighty give you mercy before the man, that he may send away your other brother and Benjamin. If I be bereaved of my children, I am bereaved. So what Jacob was doing, he was consigning himself over to the fact, listen, you go to this man, and God give you mercy in front of this man. And if he takes your little brother, and he takes Simon, and so forth, then I'll just be bereaved. But he had made the decision. He was okay, go, we've got to have this food, we've got to make this right. Okay? Y'all see the change in Jacob's heart? From being this deceiving scoundrel over to, I'm going to do what I'm going to do, and I'll be resigned to live with the results of it. Okay? But how, see, he could have said, okay, here's the money, going buy this, and give the man the gift. But no, he said, take double the money. Take twice as much as you need. Take the gifts. And that money that came back in those sacks, take that too. He was completely trying to make that man over Egypt whole at this point. Okay? Now, why do you think Jacob was doing that?
Wanted his sons back.
He wanted his sons back. Exactly. Was he being hyper-spiritual? No. He was wanting his boys back. He wanted Simon back that he hadn't seen in about 2 years, and he wanted Benjamin coming back with that caravan too. He didn't want to lose anymore. Verse 15, and the men took the present, and they took the double money in their hand, and Benjamin rose up and went down to Egypt and stood before Joseph. And when Joseph saw Benjamin with them, he said to the ruler of his house, bring these men home and slay and make ready. In other words, bring them to my house. You go slay a cattle or something. We're going to have a party. Okay? That's what it says. And slay and make ready. For these men shall dine with me at noon. And the man did as Joseph bade. And the men brought the man into Joseph's house. Okay, so Joseph's getting ready for a party, right? And look at what happens here to the brothers. And the men were afraid because they were brought into Joseph's house. And they said, because of the money that was returned in our sacks at the first time, are we brought in, that he may seek occasion against us. He can take advantage of us and fall upon us and take us for bondsmen and our asses. We're fixing to all become slaves, is what the brothers were thinking now. You know, you done got brought into the ruler's house, and he's going to take us. See? It's hard to get away from a bad conscience, isn't it? And they came near to the steward of Joseph's house, and they communed with him at the door of the house, and said, "O sir, we came indeed down at the first time to buy food. And it came to pass when we came to the inn that we opened our sacks, and behold, every man's money was in the mouth of the sack. Our money was in full weight, and we have brought it again in our hand. And other money have we brought down in our hands to buy food. We cannot tell who put our money in our sacks." All right. Do you see a little slight difference here in what they were telling the servant? When they got ready to leave Egypt the first time, how many bags of money how many bags did they open and find money? Just one. Right? The rest they found once they got home and was empty in the grain. Okay? What did they tell the servant right here? And it came to pass when we came to the inn that we opened our sacks, and behold, every man's money was in the mouth of the sack. Okay? the story changes a little bit with time, doesn't it? Okay? Verse 23, and he said, peace be to you, fear not, your God and the God of your father hath given you treasure in your sacks. I had your money, and he brought Simon out unto them. Okay? So, who did Joseph give credit? Joseph gave God the credit. Joseph didn't take the credit. He gave God the credit. And the man brought the men into Joseph's house and gave them water, and they washed their feet, and he gave their asses provender, gave them food. And they made ready the present against Joseph. And they made ready the present against Joseph came at noon, for they heard that they should eat bread there. Okay? So the servant apparently gave all the brothers the word, hey, look, you're a guest in the house of the ruler of Egypt. Okay? And he gave them water, and they washed themselves and their feet, and their donkeys were all taken care of. Now, when it says asses here, it's talking about maybe donkeys, but camels as well. Okay, it was beasts of burden and so forth. Much like whenever we say corn, they had corn in their sacks. It could have been wheat, it could have been barley, it could have been other things as well, and corn. Okay, it's like in the New Testament whenever it's talking about, and they took bread. Okay, it might have been catfish for all, it's food. Okay, but they called it bread in King James language. Okay. Now in verse 26 we start finding about their meeting with Joseph. And when Joseph came home, they brought him the present which was in their hand into the house, and bowed themselves to him on the earth. So what did they do? What did they do with Joseph? They bowed down. They put their faces in the dirt a little bit, right in front of him. They respected him. And he asked them of their welfare, and said, is your father well? The old man of whom ye spake, is he yet alive? And they answered, thy servant our father is in good health. He is yet alive. And they bowed down their heads and made obeisance. And he lifted up his eyes and saw his brother Benjamin, his mother's son, and said, is this your younger brother of whom ye spake unto me? And he said, God be gracious unto thee, my son. So Joseph blessed Benjamin. Verse 30, and Joseph made haste, for his bowels did yearn upon his brother, and he sought where to weep. And he entered into his chambers and wept there. And he washed his face and went out, and he refrained himself and said, set on bread. Joseph, seeing his brothers, seeing Benjamin, knowing that his daddy was still alive, started breaking down. And so that they wouldn't see him crying, he went off into his chambers and he cried. And then he had to wash his face, cool his eyes down and everything, get back right before he went back out and started the noon feast there. Verse 32. And they set on for him by himself, and for them by themselves, and for the Egyptians, which did eat with him by themselves, because the Egyptians might not eat bread with the Hebrews, for that is an abomination unto the Egyptians. So this banquet with Joseph was breaking some rules here. You see, the Egyptians weren't supposed to sit down and eat with Hebrews. Hebrews weren't supposed to sit down and eat with the Egyptians. Okay? Time and time again, God brings different types of people together and have them eat and fellowship and meet each other's needs. Do you notice that? We're way back here in Genesis. Okay? The Jews, however, went on through and had all these other rules that they followed that I don't believe were God's rules. Okay? They were self-imposed rules. They were rules the religious set and so forth. And even today, as you go and you talk to people about church and so forth, some people won't go to church because they don't have certain clothes to wear, or they don't live in the right neighborhood, that kind of thing. You see those things even today where people separate each other. God's intention is that we all come together, okay? There's no problem with where you live, or what car you drive, or what clothes you wear, or what job you have. You know? What color's your soul? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I think they're probably all the same color. So, when we go to heaven, first of all, how many of y'all believe that people of all different colors all around this world are going to make it into heaven? Some of them. If they accept Jesus Christ, their Lord and Savior, they're going to go to heaven. How many of y'all believe that? Valerie, do you believe that? Raise your hand. What if God does this nasty little trick of keeping us all the same color as we are right now? If you're white, you're white. If you're black, you're going to be black. If you're yellow, you're going to be yellow or red. And we have to spend eternity like that. What if God does that? That's going to disturb some things, isn't it? With some people.
Some people will be surprised.
Yeah. Or what if he does something else? What if he decides that with all those white robes and everything, that dark brown skin on all of us would look better? And when we get up there, we all turn all dark skinned to contrast with our robes. Now, I don't know if y'all watch any of the TV programs on the religious station. There's Lizella Pentecostal Church in Macon, Georgia. And they got a choir load and white robes and big old, all of them heavy. And they up there and they are bouncing and everything, and their black faces are up there and everything. They just seem so happy and so forth. And what if God makes us all colored to go with our robes? You know, the Bible doesn't tell us what he's going to make us look like. You know? So we need to get past some of these things.
He made us the first time,
He made us the first time.
he can do what he wants to say.
He can. But whether he keeps us the same colors we are right now, and we're all up into glory, we're going, look, the hatred ain't going up in there. He's not going to allow it to cross in past the pearly gates. Okay? And we're all going to be all together up there. Or if he changes us to one color. Okay? Because that's what he's going to do what he wants to do. And it's going to, you might as well get in your head, that's okay. He can do that. Okay? But even way back here, the Egyptians were eating with the Hebrews. There. So God's going to do what he wants to do. And so they're sitting down and they're eating. Verse 33, and they sat before him, the firstborn according to his birthright, and the youngest according to his youth, and the men marveled one at another. And he took and sent messes unto them from before him. But Benjamin's mess was 5 times so much as any of theirs, and they gave drink and were merry with him. Okay? So when they're talking about mess, what was that?
The portion, the amount.
Okay. All right. Chapter 44. And he commanded the steward of his house, saying, fill the man's sack with food as much as they can carry, and put every man's money in his sack's mouth, and put my cup, the silver cup, in the sack's mouth of the youngest, and his corn money. And he did according to the word that Joseph had spoken. As soon as the morning was light, the men were sent away, they and their asses. And when they had gone out of the city and were not yet far off, Joseph said unto his steward, up, follow after the men, and when thou dost overtake them, say unto them, wherefore have thou rewarded evil for good? Is not this in it which the Lord drinketh, and whereby indeed he divineth? Ye have done evil in so doing. So Joseph's already loaded up their money in the corn sacks one time. Okay, that first trip to Egypt. Now he's doing the same thing again, but this time what has he done? He's taken his goblet, okay, that he drank up during that feast, and put it in one. Whose sack did he put it in? Benjamin, the youngest. And once they left town, he sent his steward after them to overtake him. And he found him. asked them, why do you reward evil for good? Verse 7, and they said unto him, wherefore saith my Lord these words? God forbid that thy servants should do according to this thing. Behold, the money which we found in our sack's mouth we brought again unto thee out of the land of Canaan. How then should we steal out of the Lord's house silver or gold? With whomsoever of thy servant is found, let him die. And we also will be my Lord's bondsmen. And he said, now also let it be according to thy words. He with whom it is found shall be my servant, and ye shall be blameless. Then they speedily took down every man his sack to the ground, and opened every man his sack. And he searched, and began at the eldest, and left to the youngest, and the cup was found in Benjamin's sack. Then they rent their clothes, and laid it every man his ass, and returned to the city. The one thing Jacob didn't want to happen was lose Benjamin. So what did it look like was fixing to happen? Now, what was their deal? They pretty well were sure. We didn't steal no money. We didn't take anything. In fact, they said, look, the first time we came and found the money in our sacks, didn't we come and bring it back to you? Okay, so we're honest. We're not messing with you. If you find it in one of our sacks, then whoever sack you find it in, let them die. That's what these brothers were saying. The servant, though, from Egypt came and said, no, wherever we find it, that's going to be the bondsman. They're going to become a slave. Okay? They're going to come back to me to Egypt. So when they went to looking in it, they started the eldest sack and went all the way down to the youngest brother's sack, and they found it in Benjamin. They returned to the city. Verse 14, and Judah and his brethren came to Joseph's house, for he was yet there, and they fell before him on the ground. And Joseph said unto them, what deed is this that you have done? Wot ye not that such a man as I can certainly divine? And what was Joseph claiming he can do?
He can know the truth.
Divine? What's that?
By divination. Like
Divination or fortune telling? Yeah, okay. Don't you know that somebody as powerful as I am can certainly divine? And Judah said, what shall we say unto my Lord? What shall we speak, or how shall we clear ourselves? God hath found out the iniquity of thy servants. Behold, we are my Lord's servants, both we and he also with whom the cup is found. All of us are the Lord's servants, even Benjamin. Verse 17, and he said, God forbid that I should do so, but the man in whom hands the cup is found, he shall be my servant, and as for you, get you up in peace unto your father. So he's sending them back to daddy. Okay? So as we're going into this, they think they've lost Joseph. They don't recognize him yet. Simon got locked up for 2 years while they went back home. Okay? And Benjamin had to come back. And lo and behold, now Benjamin is going to be a slave to this man. And he says, yeah, I'll go back to your daddy. Go back to Jacob. Verse 18, Judah comes to appeal to Joseph. And Judah came near unto him and said, O my Lord, let thy servant, I pray thee, speak a word in my Lord's ears, and let not thine anger burn against thy servant, for thou art ever even as Pharaoh. My Lord asked his servant, saying, have ye a father or a brother? And we said unto my Lord, we have a father, an old man, and a child of his old age, a little one, and his brother is dead. And he alone is left of his mother, and his father loveth him. And thou sayest unto thy servants, bring him down unto me, that I may set mine eyes upon him. And we said unto my Lord, the lad cannot leave his father, for if he should leave his father would die. Thou sayest unto thy servants, except your younger brother come down with you, you shall see my face no more. And it came to pass, when he came up unto my servant, my father, we told him the words of my Lord. And our father said, go again and buy us a little food. And we said, we cannot go down if our youngest brother be with us. Then will we go down, for we may not see the man's face, except our youngest brother be with us. And thy servant, my father, said unto us, You know that my wife bare me 2 sons, and the one went out from me, and I said, surely he is torn to pieces, and I saw him not since. And if you take this also from me, and mischief befall him, ye shall bring down my gray hairs with sorrow to the grave. Now therefore, when I come to my servant, my father, and the lad be not with us, seeing that his life is bound up in the lad's life, it shall come to pass, when he seeth that the lad is not with us, that he will die, and thy servant shall bring forth the gray hairs of the servant, our father, with sorrow to the grave. For my servant became surety for the lad unto my father, saying, if I bring him not unto thee, then I shall bear the blame of my father forever. Now therefore I pray thee, let thy servant abide instead of the lad, a bondman to my Lord, and let the lad go up with his brethren. For how shall I go up to my father, and the lad be not with me, lest peradventure I see the evil that shall come upon my father? So Judah sat down, tried to explain to Joseph that his daddy from his one wife had 2 children, Joseph and Benjamin. And he loved them. And he lost that son, Joseph. And he said, listen, my Lord, lowercase l, my Lord, I gave myself as surety for this child so that we could come and buy food. So that we could get in front of you again, because you said if we didn't have the brother with us, that we'd not see your face. My father is going to die. This is going to kill him. You can't do this. Take me. I'll be as a slave. I'll be your slave if you'll just let my brother go. Do you see how God is starting to, because of pressure now, change the hearts of these men? Okay? Do you see that? Now Reuben was not for Joseph being thrown in the pit. Now Judah sitting there giving himself up on Benjamin's account. They weren't even full brothers. They were half brothers, right? Okay. God's working through all of this. The love of these sons for their daddy is starting to come out more. Just a few chapters ago, remember, people were afraid of these men of God because of what? Their strength. They could kill them and so forth. And now all of a sudden we're starting to see not just respect, but we're also starting to see a love toward their father. Okay? Do you see that? Starting to come out. The more God works on us, the more love we should have for him. Okay? Now we had 2 choices. When God works on us, we can become rebellious and sit down and say, no, I'm not. I'm not going to abide by what you tell me to do. I'm not going to be obedient to you. Even the things that I know I'm supposed to do, I'm not going to do it. I'm just going to be rebellious. We can do that, or we can sit down and be drawn closer to the Father and fall in love with him even more. Y'all see those? And that's kind of what he's doing with the children of Israel right now. Okay, these boys. He's working on them, and sure enough, they're drawing closer to the Lord. They're drawing closer to the Father. Okay? So it's turning out to be good things. Chapter 45. Then Joseph could not refrain himself before all of them that stood by him, and he cried, because every man can go out from me. And there stood no man with him while Joseph made himself known unto his brethren. So he sat down, and he just couldn't stand it anymore. He already had to go to his chambers and cry a little bit and wash his face and clear up his eyes and stuff before he could go back to them. But it had come to a point now where he sat down and told everybody around him, get out of here. And just he and his brothers were standing there, and he told them who he was. Verse 2. And he wept aloud, and the Egyptians in the house of Pharaoh heard. And Joseph said unto his brethren, I am Joseph. Doth my father yet live? And his brethren could not answer him, for they were troubled at his presence. They've been around this man 2 years ago, dealt with him, okay, got corn, and so forth, went back, 2 years later, came back, brought Benjamin, went through all this stuff, had this feast and everything, and now Joseph reveals himself. Joseph, what's he asked? Does my father still live? Okay, now he's already asked this once, but he's wanting to make sure. Okay? And his brothers couldn't even talk. Now the Egyptians heard Joseph weep. They obviously heard what Joseph said. Verse 4, and Joseph said to his brethren, come near to me, I pray you. And they came near, and he said, I am Joseph, your brother, whom you sold into Egypt. Now therefore be not grieved, nor angry with yourselves that ye sold me hither. For God did send me before you to preserve life. For these 2 years hath the famine been in the land, and yet there are 5 years in which there shall neither be earing nor harvest. So they've gone 2 years into this thing. They had 5 more years of famine to go. Okay? Joseph's fixing there to take care of his whole family. This one, through one person, through one man, all of Israel was going to be saved. Through one man, Jesus, all this world can be saved. See that parallel? Okay? There's 5 more years of famine so far in this story left to go. Okay? I don't know how much time we have to go before this time ends and so forth. But Jesus is that one person, that one man, that one God that's going to save us. Verse 5 says, and therefore be not grieved nor angry with yourselves that ye sold me hither, for God did send me before you to preserve life. Remember me saying last week that it's through this one way that God is sitting there making sure that the children of Israel live and don't die because of this famine? I want you to also understand, it's not by the wisdom and the smarts of the children of Israel that they were being saved. It was by the hand of God setting something aside that they had no control over that was going to save them. It's something like grace and not of works. See? It's just grace. They didn't deserve this. They didn't deserve being saved. Okay? But God still, through grace, saved them. Not through their works, but through His works. Okay? And that's how salvation comes to us. It's not our works. It's not something we've done. It's not something that we're good enough. We're not good enough. These guys were scoundrels. Okay? But yet God, in His grace, still saw fit to save them. Now, it goes back to His Word. What did God say He was going to do? God's going to bring that thing about. But if God sits down and says, listen, if you just accept Jesus Christ as your personal Lord and Savior, it's not anything you've done. It's because of my love and my grace that you can be saved through Jesus Christ. You can be saved because, not because you're good enough, you can be saved because Christ is, because God did it. Okay? Exactly the way God is saving the children of Israel right now from this famine. Still got 5 more years to go. Only been 2 years in that famine. They got 5 more years, and Joseph is fixing to bless them so much. For these 2 years hath the famine been in the land, and yet there are 5 years in the which there shall neither be earing nor harvest. So there's no ears of corn coming up. There's not going to be any staffs with wheat on top of them. There's not going to be a harvest. Verse 7, and God sent me before you to preserve you a posterity in the earth and to save your lives by a great deliverance. That's a wonderful deliverance, to be able to sit there and have that number of people saved, all the children of Israel saved because of something that God did. So now, it was not you that sent me hither, but God. And He hath made me a father to Pharaoh, and Lord of all his house, and a ruler throughout all the land of Egypt. Haste ye, hurry up, and go to my father, and say unto him, thus saith thy son Joseph, God hath made me Lord of all Egypt. Come down unto me, and tarry not. Where was their salvation going to be? In Canaan? I'm going to have to move to Egypt. God will change your location sometimes just because he has to save you and to get his work done. Wouldn't it have been more convenient for Jacob and all of his household to just stay over in Canaan and Joseph make sure enough food was sent over there to take care of him? Wouldn't that have been more convenient to Jacob? I mean, this is where he lived. This is his house. This is his land. This is what he's familiar with. Now God's fixing to say, Jacob, you're going to come to a land that you don't even know anything about. You're going to live in a country that